Hello, hi everyone. This is Dahlia,
And I'm Allie.
and welcome to Navigate the Now.
Welcome, welcome. Today we have a super special guest, Nancy DiBella, who is preface. You are the leader, the program director of our time in Costa Rica, in San Jose. And when Dahlia and I met, Nancy was the leader of that program and was there with us. And I took some classes with Nancy, and Dahlia was there, and we you took us
Yeah.
all over the place.
So Nancy was basically the one that brought us together. So thanks, Nancy.
Yeah. Thanks, Nancy. And Nancy convinced me to go to graduate school. So to
Oh,
come
what?
apply to
Full
USF.
circle. Full
Yes. She's
circle.
the one that like put that in my head and like made me believe I could do it and got me on that track. So thank you, Nancy. Yes.
Thank you. Had the pleasure of supervising one of your classes, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah. Oh,
Amazing.
thank you. Thank you. I think I remember that. Um, so a little bit about Nancy before we get started. Nancy Di Bella was born in Caracas, Venezuela, to a Venezuelan father and American mother in the midst of a revolutionary era, living in a bicultural and bilingual family. She has since lived in both the United States and Venezuela. She worked on her bachelor's degree in Venezuela and postgraduate studies in Tampa, Florida. Since moving to the Tampa Bay area in 1996 with her family, she has only returned to Venezuela twice because of safety concerns. Those concerns hastened her moving away from Caracas with her family when her sons were at the tender ages of 3, 6, and 10. Leaving her birthplace was incredibly difficult because she feels such an affinity to Caracas, mostly because of the gorgeous geography and lovely weather. So, welcome, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So happy to
Yes.
have you. It does feel like a full circle in so many ways. Nancy, before we dive into your story, we're gonna start off with our community agreements. We need your we need your okay, we need your buy-in, your blessing if all these feel right to you. So we'll start off with number one. Speaking in draft doesn't have to be a polished thought. Number two, assume everyone is doing their best. Remember, most people have good intentions. Number three, not here to be right, but to get it right. Number four, be present, active listening. Number five, be mindful of speaking space, how much time we're taking up. Number six, listen to understand instead of listening to respond. Seven, this is a space to learn and grow. Eight, don't yuck someone's yum. Don't yuck my yum. Number nine, be boundless and limitless. And number 10, have fun. So what
Love
do you
it.
think?
Very freeing. Very freeing.
You're
Yeah.
freeing? I
It
like the
is
word
freeing.
freeing. Yeah.
Yeah. Those last
Okay.
few were added by our guests, by the way. So those were some great
Oh,
additions. Shout out to our
Yeah.
guests that added those. So if you have one you want to add, feel free. But yeah,
All
I'm
right.
good. I'm good. I think you all did an excellent job. 10 is
thank you.
plenty.
So
Thank you.
that's, just letting you know the type of space you're entering here. And the idea behind asking you to join us was because Venezuela has been on the news quite a bit on the news for a long time, and then even more so recently with the United States going in and like is it kidnapping, taking out Maduro, and now he's hanging out here in the detention center in New York City. I live in New York City. I don't know if I told you this, but I live here in New York City. Okay. Um, and Allie and I, obviously, with this podcast of wanting to just highlight different topics that are going in the news, wanted to get your perspective because you were born and raised in Venezuela and the reason why you had to move. Um, so let's start.
Chose to move.
Chose to move. Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
Chose to move. So let's start with
Yeah.
question number one. What's one incorrect item or assumption you most commonly hear about Venezuela?
That it's a democratic country and that Maduro was voted in. He was never elected. So my understanding, and I may not be right, but my understanding is that Chavez, who was the president at the time, had cancer and was going back and forth to Cuba, and he
Hmm.
died in Cuba. And Maduro, my understanding is, started as his chauffeur. And so, of course, he was part of his entourage and was in Cuba with him when he
Mm-hmm.
died. Came back saying, "I've been appointed president."
Oh.
Oh,
So I mean, there have been some false, or let's not false,
conflicting.
manipulated elections
Oh,
since.
sorry. Okay.
Yes, and so, and of course, he's won every single one of them. But that's how he
Mm-hmm.
got in office.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know
So.
that he started off as the chauffeur.
Yes, yes, he worked for the
Crazy.
Metro, which was the subway, and somehow got hired to drive Chavez around, and then I guess became more and more of his, had his confidence. So he was part
Mm-hmm.
of his entourage.
Well, and that's that. I feel like that's another reason why it's so important to bring somebody on from, as we say, the diaspora, because the news was really conflicting, right? Depending on the news you listen to, you got a totally different narrative. And it was really confusing. And I would think I understood one day, and then I'd read something the next day, and I'd be like, I feel like maybe there's more nuance to this, even if I don't fully agree with this, but like maybe I don't, how do I know? How can I, and I don't understand. And I'm like, how does anybody know? Because it felt like it was one side or the other. Um, and that's why I was so curious to bring you on and hear what you had to say, because I think we just have to listen to Venezuelans instead of listening to the talking points on TV or the pundits, just to even try and
So
begin to make
from
sense of it.
from an international perspective of, people that saw the footage, there was bombing, and Maduro was apprehended with his wife and taken out of Venezuela. So from anyone looking from outside in would say that Venezuela was attacked, invaded. But for a lot of Venezuelans, and that's what I'm hearing also,
Mm-hmm.
they feel liberated because there
Right.
was so much that they were doing. They were going out on the streets, they were protesting, and Maduro and his cronies were shutting everyone up with violence. So it got to a point where people just got tired of trying to do anything
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of people left the country, and those that are in the country have just been dealing with the consequences. So a lot of people feel liberated,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
then, I mean,
Right.
they took out Maduro and his wife, who was also sort of had a role in the government, but they left his cronies.
Right.
I mean, the current president of Venezuela, her brother is part of the government, and it's very, they've done a lot of harm to the country. So
Mm-hmm.
has it stopped?
Right.
I don't know. But yeah, they've
Right.
appropriated billions of dollars
Yeah.
illicitly.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're gonna come back to that, but since this is an episode all about Nancy, tell us about what it was like being born and raised in Venezuela, and your time there that you remember.
Well, like my bio said, I lived in both countries. So my parents
Mm-hmm.
met in the States. My dad went to the States to go to school, and that's where they met in college. My mother in Tulsa, Oklahoma, because they had a very strong petroleum engineering um, program there. So my dad went there to school, met my mother, married
Mm-hmm.
her, and they moved back to Venezuela where his family lived and where he intended to work as a petroleum engineer. So there was that. Our lives were basically in petroleum camps, so outside of Caracas. But by the time I was born in 1960. So my parents got married in 1946. So I was an oops. And I joke with my parents because they already had two sons and a daughter, and they figured their family was all, they were done having the children that they had planned to have. They had the daughter they wanted. And, but there was a period of unrest because democracy was very new. A dictator had been overthrown, so there was a lot of unrest, and there were a lot of toque de queda. What do you call it? Curfews. So after 6 p.m., no one could be out on the street until 7 a.m. So there was that time, and there was no
Nancy, Nancy,
television.
A quick question. You said there was a dictator that was overthrown. What was the name of the dictator that was overthrown during that period?
Well, hmm, there was Marco Pérez Jiménez first, but then there was Rómulo Gallegos was the first democratically elected president, but that's kind of iffy. So it was Romulo Gallegos, not Romulo Gallegos, Romulo Betancourt. Sorry. So Romulo Betancourt. So
Thank you, sir.
anyway, there was no TV. There are just so many card games and board games you can play. Anyway, a lot of ladies got pregnant in that era, and I was the part of the Venezuelan baby boom. So my siblings are much older than I am. So my
Mm,
father, when I was 4 years old, he retired and we all moved to the States. So at 4, I moved back to the States. And then when I was 11, I moved back to Venezuela. It's that going and coming back and forth, right?
mhm.
So it was quite a thing for me to adapt to life in Venezuela because I'd lived in the States. It was like going back in time because Venezuela, although it was a very rich country, it was very chauvinistic. It was not all about the environment. Pollution wasn't a big deal. So there was a lot of mentality that I had to get used to because, there's a lot of gossiping and, you weren't nice to your neighbor type thing. So it was very different from back in the 60s in the United States where everyone was all about community and the fight against pollution and all that. It was kind of like going from a very developed country back to a country that was very rich but not all that developed, that didn't have much of a middle class. It was basically your upper level middle class and then very very poor people. So that's what how I grew up. So I grew up in both cultures and both languages and both types of education. It was something. So that was my childhood, back and forth and back and forth. We did stay in Venezuela after 1971 and moved around a lot in different petroleum camps and ended up in the city of Maracaibo. So I didn't move back to Caracas until I went to school there,
Okay.
college.
You said you were in the different petroleum camps. What does that look like?
Yeah.
Because when you hear of Venezuela, like you think of petroleum, right?
So it was like a gated community.
Mm-hmm.
You had your houses, and there was a school, there was a hospital, and there was a club. And so you saw everybody all at the same time. The beauty of it was that it was before petroleum was nationalized. So there were Americans, Dutch, people from all over the world. So it was a nice way to ease into the culture of Venezuela. The weird thing was that there was the what they called North Camp. I lived in San Tome, which was in the state of Anzoátegui, and there was like the staff camp, and then there was the workers camp. So they had North Camp and South Camp, and I lived in North Camp. So and there was a big difference between the two. In South Camp, nobody spoke English. In North Camp, everybody spoke English. South Camp didn't have a club, North Camp did. South Camp didn't have access to North Camp, but everyone in North Camp could go into South Camp. It was kind of an elitist type
Mhm.
environment.
Mm.
And then I was obligated to switch over to the Venezuelan education system, so I had to bus into town in El Tigre. It was just I mean, we had movies, we had a bowling lane, we had a big Olympic swimming pool. They had a bar and for the parents, but then the kids could have, little parties there, but then there was also a soda fountain next to the pool where we could get pizzas and hamburgers and things like that. So it was just like a bubble, really, a bubble within Venezuela. But since I bussed out to
Mhm.
school, to my school in El Tigre, then that's where I went to school with kids from El Tigre and local people. So that's really when I got a taste of what Venezuelans were really like.
So that you grew up speaking Spanish and English, right? That's a very
Yes.
unique upbringing for sure.
Yeah, and when we lived in Venezuela, we spoke English at home because my mother didn't want us to forget the language. But when we lived in pardon, in the United States, we spoke Spanish at home.
Was your
I will
mom
say I forgot a lot of my Spanish. Hmm?
was your mom fluent in Spanish?
She
When
was. She was
yeah.
more Venezuelan than my dad in love of the culture. Like she loved to wear peasant tops and big flowy flowery skirts and alpargatas that were just the typical shoe wear, and she loved it. And she loved the folkloric music, so she was much more Venezuelan, I think, than my dad. My dad would want to listen to music from Argentina or from Spain.
What does it mean for you to be Venezuelan?
Well, it's weird because I don't feel like I'm totally one or the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of
Um,
sense.
because I grew up with both cultures. So Venezuelans are very warm. They love to party, and I don't mean alcohol. I mean dance, music, and that's me. I'll dance to a jingle. I love to dance. I walk around the house singing and dancing. We love food. And Venezuela has a lot of regions in it, which I think is really special. There, you'll find deserts, you'll find snow caps up in because the Andes begin in Venezuela. There's gorgeous beaches because the northern coast of Venezuela is the southern basin of the Caribbean. You have jungle because and, you've heard of Angel Falls, so it's there. So it's just an absolutely gorgeous country. So I think a lot about that, about nature and good food, warmth, people inviting you over. There's always a cup of coffee for somebody, and maybe an arepa or two, and a lot of
Yummy. I want to add up.
yes, yes. I would say that we
Yes.
identify more with our music and our food than with our history or anything else. It's the geography and the great food.
What's your favorite arepa combination? Because I feel like in Venezuela, you they tend to put things in the arepa, right? More than just eating the arepa, like in Colombia.
So my favorite arepa is with cheese, but it has to be
Mm,
Venezuelan cheese. And there's a cheese in Venezuela, it's called guayanés, and it's very creamy but tangy. So it's got the tanginess of like feta cheese, but it's got the stringiness of mozzarella, and that's my favorite. So yes, and butter, lots of butter. If it doesn't drip down your hands when you're eating it, then you don't have enough butter on it.
I don't think I've had Guyanese cheese, and that sounds like my type of cheese. Melty.
You're missing out. I mean, I've only had it in Venezuela. I mean, there's some people that have tried to make it in Texas, and I've bought it online, but it's
nice, nice.
so yeah. But then there's the famous reina pepiada, which is like a
Hmm.
chicken salad with avocados in it. It's famous for that. Not, I wouldn't turn it down, but yeah, if I had my favorite, it would be with cheese. Queso guayanés.
Nice, nice. Does that have context of coming from Guyana at all? I'm thinking like,
Guayana. Well, there's an area. So sorry for interrupting you.
no,
The
you're good.
There's an area south of the Orinoco River that they call Guayana. But yes, I think it does have something to do with Guyana. Good point.
Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool. So you're talking about your childhood and then now moving kind of forward to later in life. I know when we met you, these were the moments that stuck in my head and why I wanted, this is why I thought of you was when I took those classes with you and we were talking about Latin American history. You shared a lot, and I know you spoke of when you left and everything, and that you had a business and you had this life there that you really loved. That was kind of my takeaway. And before we get into it, I wanted to ask you after your bio, I love for people to get a chance to say their loved ones' names. And so I was wondering if we could hear your son, like what are your son's names?
So their father is Italian, and of course, with the name Di Bella, which is their father's last name, I wanted Italian names. So, because it just went better with the Di Bella. So you have Gian Pietro Di Bella, Stefano Di Bella, and Alessandro Di Bella. And when we got their names, it was always trying to play it with the last name. So Stefano helped me name Alessandro.
It sounds beautiful. I like it.
Thank you. But Gian Pietro doesn't like being called Gian Pietro. He goes by Gian, Gian.
yeah.
But of course, when we
Nice.
first moved to the States, they wanted to be, as American as possible and blend in. So they became John, Steve, and Alex.
Mm.
S- So your kids were born in Venezuela, and then you guys move, and then they did they have the back and forth, or was it just Venezuela and then move to the States for good?
No, they didn't have the back and forth, unfortunately. Once we moved to the States, we went back for Christmas, our first Christmas. We moved in May of 1996 and we went for Christmas of 1997. One of my sister, well, actually both of my sister-in-laws were expecting, so we wanted to see them expecting, and we were actually there for the birth of the first other grandchild that was not our kids. So we went then, and I could already feel the tension. You could really feel like the haves and the have-nots, and those that had didn't have were very aggressive toward those that had. But again, we lived in a gated, we still had our apartment, so we were staying in a very gated, protected area. So it was kind of sort of okay. But then we went back in Christmas, not Christmas, summer, I want to say of 1998. And you could really feel the resentment. And by then, Chavez was president, and I just didn't feel safe. So there were certain places we went, certain places we didn't go. We only visited family. We stayed within areas where we felt safe. And that following December, there was a huge landslide on the coastal side of Caracas. So Caracas is divided from the coast by a huge mountain, and you have to go through tunnels to get to the coast, but that's where the international airport is. And there was a landslide. There was just this deluge of rain that just made these landslides, and it was horrible. There were people that lost their homes. There were people that were separated because helicopters were going down to get people, and they were only taking children first, and then women, and then men. And so families were separated. And it's my understanding that there's still people that haven't found their children or their families. So it was horrible. It was actually absolutely horrible. And I never went back,
Mm.
ever. My two youngest sons, Stefano and Alessandro, went back, I want to say in 2012, maybe 2013. But again, it was they only were hanging out with their cousins and going to places that could be safe. Like it was, you had to be very guarded.
Mhm. Mhm.
And Alessandro was talking about wanting to go recently. Well, not that recent, about a year ago. I think I was still living in the States, and we were like, no, because there's no police that will protect you. The police will are corrupt. So if it's a benefit to them to stop you and take your valuable watch and your iPad and your phone, they will. Does that make sense? It's no man's land. I don't know if you've heard, but Maduro actually set free a lot of prisoners from prison, gave them arms and motorcycles, and had them be their militia. So they're kind of running the country right now.
That I didn't hear. I mean, to be completely
Yeah.
honest, my knowledge of Venezuela history is very limited. Part of the reason why this was like, super important to hear it, and that kind of makes sense to him letting people go from prison, and then it's like I've given you your freedom, now you work for me. That's
And they're still out there.
yeah.
So now they're helping Delcy Rodriguez and her cronies or her people.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary. I mean, I understand how Venezuelans could be like, oh, we're liberated, but are they really?
Yeah. It's like you took one bad apple out, but there's still plenty of others. Can you tell us about the moment that you decided that we no longer could live here?
Mhm.
Like with you and your
It was
family
a
when you decided.
process.
Yeah.
So Chavez had attempted to overthrow the government. And during that attempt, I was expecting Alessandro. And I lived in a high-rise apartment building, and I actually saw a, a faithful pilot chasing a rebel pilot. And I could see them. I could see their helmets. I could see their, their visors, and I could see the missile being shot at the other plane, like from my house, from my apartment, and that freaked us all out. But then that was all that, they apprehended Chavez, they put him in jail, so that was all stopped. But the poor were getting poorer, and desperation was getting worse. So people were getting robbed. So my father-in-law was robbed at gunpoint, his car. Then my then husband had gone to a place kind of like, oh, what's the big wholesale store?
Like Costco
In
or
like
BJ's
Costco or
or
Sam's.
yeah.
Well, there it was called Macro, and he had gone to Macro, and he put his phone down to sign the credit card, and somebody had taken his phone right there, right under his nose. And that's when it was like, okay, things are getting really bad. So the plan was for my then husband to go to the States or Italy or into the interior of Venezuela, away from Caracas. And we ended up deciding that it would be the States. So the plan was he would go to the States, find a job, figure it all out, get a place for us to live, and then the boys and I would meet up with him in the States. But then a neighbor was kidnapped, held at her. Well, they were watching her, so they saw that she went to the gym at a certain time all the time. So they intercepted her on her way to her car in the parking lot. They took her to ATMs and emptied out her bank accounts, and they held her. They were at her house getting all her valuables. And her boyfriend was not understanding why she wasn't answering her phone, was worried, and showed up at the apartment just as the guys were leaving. So long story short, everybody died. The
That's
the
crazy.
thieves, the
Oh my
boyfriend,
gosh.
the yeah, it was horrible. We even heard because they tried to get into the house the kind of SWAT style, and I
And
guess
Nancy, this was your
they used.
neighbor, right? I'm sorry to.
She was a neighbor in a another apartment building close to mine.
Got it. Got
But
it.
since they kind of rappelled into her apartment, the police did kind of SWAT style. They used explosives to break the window, and we felt the vibrations of the explosive. And we were all watching this on TV because it was covered. Anyway, um, my boy's dad looked at me and said, "You're not staying here with the boys. You're coming with me. We're all leaving." And we had everything set to leave May 1st, 1996. So that was it. It was like, yeah, I mean, because we just didn't feel safe. I mean, Pedro did not feel, sorry, that was my boy's father, did not feel good leaving me behind. He just couldn't do it. So we all packed up 10 boxes
Absolutely.
and just went to the States and figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rough.
Where did you land when you went to the States?
We landed in Miami. We had these 10 boxes, and the fun part was trying to find a rental car that we could put all the boxes, the three kids, and us. So that was fun. I think the fourth attempt was the one that worked. And then we just drove up to Clearwater. My sister lived in Clearwater Beach, and she had found us a sort of an apartment hotel that we could stay at on right on the Gulf. So that was nice. And we moved to the Tampa Bay area because my sister lived there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do they? I, I asked this because there was, when I was at USF in the graduate program, somebody else had been a victim of the same kind of story and made it out. And from my understanding, is this what just since most of our listeners live here in the United States, they might, but is this what they call? There was the paseo millonario, essentially, where they would watch you. I mean, her story was kind of just exactly the same, where it's like somebody watches you, but same thing, where they it's almost like they track you for a while and they know your movements, and then the same thing, they took her to the ATM. They did it just before midnight so they could take everything before midnight, and then after, and um,
Well, they used to call it secuestro express, so an
okay,
express kidnap. instead of
Okay.
kidnapping you and holding you for ransom. They held you against your will, got everything they could, and then a lot of times they would just leave you without any clothes somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and give them enough time to, go off in your car, and then you'd have
Mm-hmm.
to figure out a way to get home help because they'd leave you without your phone, without anything.
Yeah. That's yeah.
And no clothes, because that's going to slow you down. I mean, if you're dressed, you can run for it, but if you
Yeah.
don't have any clothes on, then you have to find a way to cover yourself up and
Yeah.
figure out where there's, people that can help you out. It's just it slows you down.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I think their
horrible.
story. I think their
That's like
story
a
was that when I um so I don't know if you remember the first year we when I got to USF to start my graduate program. Do you remember we were on lockdown and I remember waving at you through the subway? You were locked in the subway, sitting with somebody like visiting. I don't know
It
if
was
you remember
Helen
that.
Rojas from what's the name of
Uh
their company? Oh
oh,
goodness.
was it like Aventuras, the people that did our book, or no?
No, no, no. It was Helen
Oh,
Rojas, the one that took over the program and that you went
oh,
to.
oh, okay.
Universal de Idiomas
Mhm.
Oh,
was the
okay.
name of the institute.
And
Gotcha.
it's Subway the
Gotcha.
restaurant, not Subway a subway cart because there's no subway
Yeah,
cart.
Subway the restaurant.
No.
They had said that there was someone armed and they just locked down the university, and Helen and I were stuck in the subway. The subway, it was all glass windows. And
Yes.
they were saying,
And
"Get away from the window! Get away from the window!" It's like, where do we go?
yeah. And I walked by. I thought it was okay to walk over. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't want to miss Pablo's class if it was still on. So I was like, well, I'm going over to Cooper. And I saw you and we waved at each other. I'll never forget waving at Nancy in lockdown. But then that story was relayed to me because the person was very stressed out and kind of explained to me like this is really igniting some memories. So
PTSD.
yeah. Um
I was
and so
very
you
fortunate that I never went through any of
yeah.
that. Me personally, I never ever.
And what I was going to ask, what was your business then? I know because that's what I remember you talking about having this business and leaving. And so what were you guys doing in Venezuela, if I can ask?
We designed English language programs for
Oh,
people, and so we would go to their workplace before work, during lunchtime, or after work. And it was always tailor made to whatever they needed, if they were lawyers, if they were pharmaceutical companies. So we gave them the language and the vocabulary
wow,
to be able to speak English professionally.
very cool.
It was very cool because you got to meet so many people, and we were just going office to office. So yeah, it was very nice.
And I would say that even coming to the United States, that it still continued in that realm of like language that you continued your career.
Exactly. Well, that's what I started doing in the States. I taught for a hotel, and I was teaching their what do they call it? Well, the
Like the housekeeper or the yeah.
housekeepers and also the land keepers. I was teaching them English, and then the folks at the office, they wanted to learn Spanish, so I started teaching them Spanish. And then some people in the community wanted me to teach kids to speak Spanish. So a group of us started a language program for kids at
Oh.
the Seminole Community Center. And someone in the Pinellas County school system heard about me and interviewed me, but I don't have a degree in education. So she said, go back to school, get your degree, and we'll work together. She wanted me to design some things for teachers to learn Spanish so that they could speak to children that came from Spanish speaking countries and didn't speak English yet, just to give them those tools. But it never came to fruition.
Mm.
It came through fruition in different ways, maybe not
It
exactly as
did because
yeah.
I taught at university, which I loved.
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of teaching kids. I love teaching adults. You can talk about interesting topics. It's not
Yeah, yeah,
teaching
yeah.
songs and coloring and stuff like that. I wanted to
Love
have
it.
some deep discussions, and that's why I love teaching at college level so much. But then I started traveling abroad, and then I started taking students abroad, and then I ended up working in education abroad.
Ooh, yeah.
Woo, woo, woo,
Well,
woo.
we appreciate
I loved
that.
it. I loved it.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Uh,
I wanted to go back a little bit and talk about when you did first move, what, in 1996. How were you received when you first came to the States? I'm sure it would be, I'm sure everybody's story is different, right? You came here already knowing the language, already kind of having one foot here, one foot there. Um,
And the
how
culture,
was it? Huh?
and knowing the culture.
And knowing the
So I
culture.
was
Yeah.
received really well
Yeah.
because you couldn't tell by my accent that I didn't speak, that I wasn't American. But I will have to say that my then husband had a rough time because he spoke with an accent. And although he's sort of redheadish and freckled and very light skinned, just because of his accent, it was very difficult for him to find a job. Um, even he was even Oh, he just, yeah, it was very difficult for him to find a job. So he ended up, yeah, starting up his own business and working with people in Venezuela and Colombia and Spain. And because he never really found a job that he was so qualified for, because he was an industrial engineer with a degree in chemistry as well. So he's a brilliant, brilliant man. And, he needed a job that he could use his potential. So he ended up starting up his
Yeah.
own business because he just
That's
couldn't find a job.
Oh, that's pretty crazy. He had all the like the education, the experience, and it was the language barrier. Although he spoke some English, or his English was
He spoke great English, but he had an accent.
it was the accent. Like that's crazy.
Yes.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's hard. It did a number on his self-esteem, his confidence. So yeah, it was very rough. I felt very bad for him. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
but not to mention that our life savings were just dwindling
Mm-hmm.
until things started to. But it was a rough patch, and it was a rough patch on the kids.
Yeah.
They had a certain life, and then all of a sudden, we were pinching pennies, and
Mm-hmm.
they were very confused, and a new culture, and
Right.
but they fit in beautifully. Yeah.
And when I met you, or when we met you, I should say, you were doing your PhD. I feel like we haven't mentioned that, but I know you were working on your graduate work.
I met my wife in the program, so that's wonderful.
Oh, through the program?
Aw.
It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a second language acquisition and instructional technology doctorate. Yeah, no, it fizzled out. I was kind of pressured, are you going to or aren't you type thing.
Mm.
And I was just like, I can't right now. I mean, it was a time in my life my mother was very sick and I had just gotten divorced and it was just too much. So I opted out. And they forced me to sign something saying you're not going to try to come back. And now I know why, because it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anyway,
that sounds
but Jane
shady.
got hers. She has a collector's item
Oh, her collector's item.
diploma.
Yeah, that sounds shady to be like, you can't drop it. You are not going to continue with a course, a program, and they're like, you have to sign this and saying that you're not going to come back. Like,
Well,
what?
and part of the issue was that a lot of faculty were leaving USF, and so I had a committee, and four people on my committee had left, and so I had to restart a committee so that I could, because I'd done all the coursework, but I needed to take the qualifying exam and then work on a dissertation, and I didn't have a committee to do it with.
Mm.
So, that was rough. It was just too much.
Okay.
Wanting to touch base on something that you mentioned even before we started recording about survivor's remorse.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's like a few things that we can touch on here because now where you currently tell the listeners where you're currently living.
I currently live in the UK in Lentwardine, England, which is very
Ooh.
close to Ludlow. So I'm sort of close to Birmingham, not the same county. I'm still in the county of Herefordshire. Uh, I I retired from education abroad and sold everything and moved to the UK. Life was getting a little violent for me in the United States. I'm a woman. I'm Latina, and I'm married to a woman. So things were getting a little uncomfortable and tense.
And you
It
were
was
living by
so bad
yourself.
that I think I told you I have a neighbor that was very right wing, and he told us not to worry that he had guns and he would protect us because he loved us ladies. He
Oh
always
my
called us
God.
the girls, the ladies.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had friends that were also in same-sex marriages that were looking to leave the country because they were concerned and felt
Mm-hmm.
aggression against them. I mean, I remember standing in the supermarket and this one lady, an American lady, very white, was sitting in, those little scooters you can get in the supermarket, has
Mm-hmm.
a basket, and she was going on and on about the Vietnamese dentist that was probably someone that didn't even have qualifications, and she couldn't trust her, and she said she was a dentist, and then the her doctor was from Pakistan, and she couldn't really trust that person, and I was like, oh my goodness, ma'am, I wanted to get away from her. I mean, she was so hateful. That's the word, hateful.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so hatred got to a point where I didn't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel safe. And so we decided to just get rid of everything and move to the UK. And oh my
Mm-hmm.
goodness, people are so accepting and open and caring and loving. Nobody looks at you weird when you introduce your wife or when I say I'm from Venezuela. Nobody goes, "Ooh, you're one of those," or anything. Everybody's, if anything, they find the fact that I'm from Venezuela really interesting.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been living there?
Yeah.
I moved in July of 2025.
Oh, okay. So not a full year yet.
Not a full year yet, but
Um,
I did go back because my dog was there. So I went back to get my dog, and I also was able to be with the grandkids on their birthdays, and I was there for my 65th birthday.
ooh,
And
happy birthday.
thank you, but I have to admit that getting on the plane to come back it was a British Airways plane. The difference from the tension, the stress, the anxiety that you could feel from people. It's just so palpable. To stepping on the plane among Brits was just my shoulders went down. It wasn't because I knew I was going to the UK. I could feel a different vibe in the
Hmm.
plane.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you said that you were feeling survivor's remorse twice because leaving
Ex-
Venezuela and then leaving the United States.
exactly. And I do feel it. And the more stories I hear, it breaks my heart. But then I'm just like, I'm so glad I don't live there, but I feel guilty that I don't live there and I'm in a safe place. And I
Mm-hmm.
sleep really well, and I walk alone on the streets without being concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Peaceful,
I
feeling
was,
peace.
sorry,
I said feeling peace.
feeling peace because I was born a citizen of the United States. When I was born in Caracas, my mother got me a U.S. birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
And for the last, well, for many years now, I have traveled with my original birth certificate because on my passport it says I was born in Caracas, Venezuela. And in the event that I could be stopped and questioned, like, when did you naturalize? How long have you been a citizen? I could say I was born a citizen. Here you go. And other documents because I don't carry my maiden name. So other documents showing that I was born Nancy Medina, but then I got married and I'm now Nancy Di Bella and I was born a citizen,
When did you start
just in
feeling
case.
that? Like feeling that you needed to start carrying your pass or your birth certificate to show that you were,
Can I name names of important people and presidents
yes,
during Trump's first term?
during his first term, you started feeling that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I had people coming to me saying, I'm from Puerto Rico and I was stopped at customs,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So my concern of the level of ignorance of the officials at immigration, I didn't want to risk it. I
Well,
didn't want to be detained.
We're really in the throes of that right now. It's gotten, I feel like, as extreme as it can. My brother is a naturalized, I've been texting Dolly this week. My brother's a naturalized citizen, an international adoptee, and he carries his birth certificate, but the same thing. I'm currently living in Springfield, Ohio, or outside where I'm from, which was kind of the heart of a lot of rhetoric during the election. I don't know if you remember. But we have had a large immigrant population arrive to help and aid in working. But the people are leaving Minneapolis right now and coming here, ICE specifically, or immigration. And yeah, he's just carrying his birth certificate around, but it's like that's all you can do. Um, so, but yeah, they don't, because
Exactly.
they don't know what they're doing. I mean,
I mean, I can't imagine the terror some people are going through having someone masked coming up to you. I mean, I cannot imagine. And before I left the States, I worked a lot with teachers, and they were talking about what to do in the event that, somebody would come to the schools and parents not coming to teacher parent meetings because they were afraid of being apprehended. I mean, that was before July of 2025.
absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Well, and then I feel like in Florida, just backing up for some people, not everybody has the context of Florida. Ron DeSantis came as well. And, we had the Don't Say Gay. And there was a lot of this increased, really anti LGBTQ plus rhetoric that was like almost grandstanding. And I don't know, almost to just make a point to be the leader of this whole movement, or, it's tough. And they just had all those, um, I know, and I think it was St. Pete and in Tampa, they had the things removed from the road. The
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
the
yes.
art
The
that they did
painting.
in support of Black Lives Matter and in support of LGBTQ, they were both removed recently. I think there was a huge one next to my yoga studio in Tampa that I used to drive over all the time, and I think I saw that was removed. But I know the St. Pete one I read in the news as well. So it's heartbreaking.
It is. But hasn't the current government tried to pass a bill to not acknowledge same-sex marriages? But it's been pushed back by the Supreme Court. I mean, there's an
Yes.
attempt to
Hmm.
nullify same-sex marriages.
Yeah. And what's really scary right now as well with anybody who's changed their gender on their passport is getting put on a watch list, and it's a mess. So,
Yeah. I think, I think his trans daughter lived in Ohio, and she was panicking because they were threatening to not allow her to get her medications, and she can't live without her medications. So, and I have a nephew, a niece, sorry, a trans niece that's also
hmm
panicking.
hmm
She's put all her money into gold lingots just in case she has to leave the country,
hmm
you know.
Mm.
hmm
Where does your niece live? She lives here in the States?
Tulsa, Oklahoma,
Mhm.
and her mother, who's my niece, so she's my great niece, works in the mental health uh, field, and she works with her mother. But she's my niece is like, I don't know how to keep her safe.
Yeah.
They have to investigate what public bathroom she can use, and whenever they go anywhere, research it before they go, just because people can be so hateful. I mean,
hmm
okay, so there's a professor at USF, and his daughter-in-law had a mastectomy, total, both double, whatever the term is. And she has people harass her for being trans.
Oh
And
my
she's a
goodness.
woman. But because she has an appearance of being a trans woman, she gets harassed. I mean, it's just like, my goodness.
hmm
Anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we can't. It feels like there hasn't been a lot of wins lately here in the States. Um, and it has been really hard. But, as I was mentioning earlier before we started recording, part of the reason why Allie and I wanted to create this space so we can have these conversations open and candidly. And I do want to share with the listeners that Nancy was hesitant to say anything about the government, and because she was worried about how the government would react to us, react to two, two women who were just speaking on the mic, their feelings, their thoughts, and sharing the experiences of others. And I think that that goes to show of where how we've almost reverted back to the times where I don't even know, like it's it's tough. It's tough. When you said that, I was thinking about my family that lives in Cuba when I went there, and they were like, we can't speak poorly about the government, like
Because you never know who's going to rat you out.
exactly, exactly. But what I want to kind of tie it back to Venezuela and
Hmm.
when everything went down, what was your experience? Like, what were your initial thoughts about?
How's my family? How are my friends? That was my first concern. And I was kind of shocked that I was hearing we're okay, no worries. And I was like, you're not telling me anything. But then I later found out that they've established a law that if they find anything on your phone that is against the government, that they will arrest you. So
Mm,
people are very careful about what they say. They're very careful about what they put down, just like, Cuba.
yeah,
You don't know who you can trust. You don't know who's going to rat you out, and you can be arrested. So I quit asking. I just left my family and friends alone because I don't want them to get into trouble. But
right.
they're creating these stops. They call them alcabalas. What do you call road stops?
Okay.
These random road stops, and they stop you and they go through your phone. They go through your
Mm.
car.
How did you hear
And
about that? Because I know it's not your family telling you that.
no, social media.
Social media telling you.
Social media.
It's a blessing and a curse, that social media.
Yeah, but at least I know
Yeah.
that's what's going on.
Yeah.
And a lot of Caraqueños, now they just when they ask each other, "How are you?" the response is alive. Because can you imagine the bombing?
Mhm.
I mean, I've seen people showing their house and the results
Yeah.
of the bombing. Like
Devastating.
the windows didn't just shatter, the whole iron frame that was holding the glass was blown inside and warped. Bullets on the walls or shrapnel on the walls. I can't imagine. And it happened in the middle of the night, so I can't imagine. Um,
Traumatizing for sure, to say the least, like at minimum.
Two of my nephews were out. One was out partying. He'd just gotten married. It was like the
Oh.
second night, and they were out dancing. And thank goodness they were with a group of people and were able to go to someone's house and
Mm.
stay there and stay put until they figured out what was going on because nobody knew what was going on. And another nephew was at a friend's house and the windows shattered while they were there. And so it was just,
Mm.
Wow.
yeah, such a beautiful city. I don't know if you've seen it, naturally beautiful, like that huge mountain that they call the Silla de Caracas because it's like a big armchair, green and beautiful, and then the valley and its modern buildings. But I mean, there the wildlife that lives among people in Caracas. I mean, people have macaws that come fly up to their balconies, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful city. And to imagine it being bombed, I mean, watching that footage for me was terrifying. I knew that my closest family lived away from the center of the city, so I knew that they weren't affected. But still, when this happens to your community, it's going to affect you one way or another. It affects everyone. Everyone's like, what is going on? But the sad part is that they've been living through things like this for decades. So, not being able to find food or not being able to find water or being without electricity is not new to them, unfortunately. I mean, I even lived it. I remember going to my in-laws' house. Do you have salt? Do you have rice? Do you have oil? Like we would swap because you couldn't go to the supermarkets were closed. There was no place to go and get food.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And that's even having like the monetary resources to purchase it. There just wasn't any.
Exactly. And in those instances, a lot of those places are ransacked. People
Mm,
break windows and they go in and they steal. I mean,
yeah.
they take advantage of the chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Nancy, we appreciate you sharing. Is there anything that maybe we haven't asked that you would want the listeners to know a little bit more about? Or we try to be as thoughtful as possible with our questions. And this being your episode to talk about, your country. Is there anything else that you would want to share before we start wrapping up?
Oh, good golly. Just love your neighbor. Just love. Love will always pull us through. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy times for everybody and it's scary. But I think that if we focus more on doing good, it's better than just sitting there and just rehashing all the bad.
Absolutely.
We'll get through this.
Yeah. It's not the
Yeah.
first time in this history, right? This country, your country, that gone through something like this. Like moving forward.
But it just blows my mind that we haven't learned from history.
I know.
It's like,
Yeah.
what the heck? But anyway, we will prevail. I have to have faith in things getting better. It's
Yeah.
the issue is that when you do things legally, it takes time. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to trust the system. There are some good
Mm-hmm.
people out there that are really working hard on keeping Venezuela on the on the right track, which will take decades to recover from everything, and the same with the United States.
Mm-hmm.
It'll
How,
take
I mean,
time.
we've talked about you leaving Venezuela so much, but I do wonder how you've just left the United States, but your children are in the United States, and just kind of like how you're reckoning with that right now as well.
Well, yeah, it's rough, but I'm very lucky that they are men
Mm-hmm.
and uh, they have good jobs and they have, friends and neighbors and companies that will vouch for them. And I just keep affirming that they are fine, that they will be fine. And they keep reassuring me that they're fine. But yeah, but I worry about my granddaughter though.
Mm-hmm.
She's a
Yeah.
she's 16 and but she's got
Mm-hmm.
such a great head on her shoulder, so I just keep and I have a wonderful daughter-in-law that is so good with her and my grandson. So more power to her. She's amazing. So
Mm-hmm.
I just keep affirming that they are all well and they'll be fine. But I do worry about people that are targeted.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't do anything by worrying. And then I have the survivor's remorse, right? I'm here in the UK, living a lovely life, very peaceful, and then I feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
I jumped ship. I didn't stay with a captain.
Well, I keep thinking to myself of like how to respond about survivor's remorse, and I acknowledge that and I validate your feelings for having that, but at the same time, like you did what you needed to do to keep yourself safe, and you're no good to anybody else when you're, you know, if you're not here, right, and you're not doing what's
Mm-hmm.
best for you. So
Mm-hmm.
appreciate love, and I love this for you. I love that you
Thank
remarried
you.
Yes.
and that you're living your best life and that you've given so much and now you're doing what's best for you, and so may you continue to feel that way. And
Thank you.
I being here in the States, earlier I think I mentioned that there was just like a lot of despair and what are we going to do next, but I'm feeling really hopeful. I'm feeling that people are leaning into their community a lot more, and this podcast is all about adding tools to our toolbox. And I know that you mentioned about living, loving your neighbor. Uh, What tools would you like to give our listeners to put in their toolbox to how to navigate through these moments?
Stay positive and focus on the good.
Hmm.
The more you focus on the good, more that becomes part of your life.
Yes, absolutely.
That's how I keep my sanity, focusing on the good.
Andy. Well, thank you so much, Nancy. Allie, was there anything
Yes.
else that you wanted to share or add before we wrap up?
No, no, we're so thankful for you for coming, and I'm so glad I got to see you again in virtual form. But it's been a long time, and you're like yeah, you have a great spot in my heart. So
Oh, thank
I'm so
you.
thankful for
Thank
you.
you. It makes
Hmm.
that means the world to me. And just remember, you all have a place to come and visit or seek shelter, whatever the case may be.
Thank
We
you.
have
Sounds
plenty of
good.
room. So we would love to have you all come visit and
Yeah,
stay in touch.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Take
All
care.
right.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.